going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. It's Saturday, so time to answer some of your questions as well as go over some of the best and worst wide receiver cornerback matchups. Remember, that means we're not going to go over the news, so you've got to stay on top of that. Check Twitter, Sleeper, Roto World, and just make sure if a guy's got COVID, if a guy's got a twisted ankle, you know about it to set your lineups properly. So, we will start things off as usual with the stat of the day. Yesterday's stat was which wide receiver with at least 40 targets on the season is averaging the least amount of separation. The answer is AJ Green. Of course, has not been good this season. And Chris Clark was the first to get that one right. Today's stat, through week 8, so not including the Thursday night game, one wide receiver was tied with Davante Adams for the highest weighted opportunity rating. Who was it? All right, before we go over your questions, I want to open with some trade news. You guys asked when I went over the Mahomes trade in my 14-team sleeper league, you said, hey, if you do other trades, it would be nice to know what you were doing, so can you update on that as it happens? I said, of course, and I have made my second trade. This is a full PPR league. Remember that, 14 teams. I traded away Will Fuller and T. Higgins to acquire DeAndre Hopkins. I definitely think I won that trade regardless of what ends up happening. I think the process was correct. And it's another example of what I always talk about in wanting the better player to give up 2, 3, even 4 guys. Remember, I did a 4-for-1 trade to get Mahomes, now a 2-for-1 trade to get Hopkins. And so I've given away 6 players to acquire 2, but it's been to acquire 2 and some bench pieces. Since week 3, Higgins has been like a low-end wide receiver 1. Fuller has been like a mid-range wide receiver 2. And I will absolutely give up 2 players of that caliber to get, another top 2 receiver, because now I get to pair Adams with Hopkins. If you remember, the deal for Mahomes was Carson Wentz, Robert Woods, Joshua Kelly, and Philip Lindsay for Mahomes. And now I've done Fuller and T. Higgins for Hopkins. Right now, I guess if you want to look at the players that I have acquired when gaining those 4 bench spots, it's been DJ Dallas, Rager, Mooney, and Jordan Reed. I did end up dropping Mooney because I had to add Jordan Reed to the active roster, which I guess I should not have done. Hopefully that doesn't really hurt me this week, doesn't take away Davante Adams' monster performance, because Reed did terrible. Probably should have just dropped Reed and then played Gesicki, but I don't know, I got a little too excited in the Thursday game. But that's the team, that's the update. If I make more moves, I will update you guys. But again, whenever you guys send me these trades, you want to be the person getting the one player. So if you ask me, is this a good trade? Is this a good trade? If you're getting a stud and you're giving up 2 players, it's probably a good trade. That's what you always want to do, because you get to add players on the bench and you want your starting lineup to end the season to be awesome. Okay, that's enough about me. Let's go over some of your questions. We're going to start off with a start-sit, and it's Gibson versus Swift. I have actually seen a number of people ask this exact question, and also I have this decision in a league that I'm co-owning, so I'm sure a lot of you out there actually have to make this call. I have Gibson in right now. That is a half PPR league. I believe under any format, I would have the exact same decision. Absolutely, if Stafford ends up being out, I would do this. As of right now, if he continues to test negative, he should be playing, which of course, having Stafford in is going to help DeAndre Swift. The line has barely moved in that game, which to me does indicate that they're expecting Stafford to play. Keep an eye on that. If the line all of a sudden jumps to -7, -8 in favor of the Vikings, well, okay, we're expecting Stafford to be out. But the line is still like 4.5 points in favor of still Minnesota, because they're the better team. But the point is, I think we should lean towards Stafford playing, and so it's a boost for Swift, and it's a boost for everyone in that offense. Right now, I have Gibson at 14.8 half PPR points and Swift at 13.4. In the rankings, I have Gibson at 13, Swift at 17. And my reasoning is just the projection mixed with this floor and ceiling combination. So we always say, okay, if dudes are projected exactly the same, well, I want the one with the higher ceiling. That's just what I like to do. That's how you win weeks, is with ceiling. But Gibson is projected for a good amount more. It's not like a bunch more, but in a projection, if it's off by that much, Gibson on average will do better. Then we look at the floor and we say, well, okay, Swift has a floor of like 1 or 2 points. That's not exaggerating. He could go out there and get 5 carries and 2 targets. That is not something we expect to happen from Gibson. Gibson's probably going to see 10, 12, 14, 16 touches. I mean, I would say 10 would be a disappointment. He should be around 15 touches pretty much every week moving forward. And so given that Swift, I've looked at things, he has about 1 point higher for a ceiling projection just because of the receiving upside. That's it. If he's only going to win 1 point in his 80th percentile ceiling, he loses in average, he loses in floor. I don't think the ceiling is high enough ahead for Swift that I'm starting Gibson in my league. Next question deals with DJ Chark, and someone asked, is he droppable? I wouldn't go that far on average. He is going to be featured in the wide receiver cornerback matchups portion of the video, so I don't want to give too much away there. But dropping him would honestly just come down to, like I kind of always say, who's on free agency, right? Are you in a 10-team league that's fairly inactive? Okay, he might be droppable. You might have some really solid options on free agency. Or are you in a 12-team league where pretty much everyone in the league is fairly active? Well, now I'd be pretty surprised if someone on free agency is a better option. So he's 36 in targets, 18th in air yards per game. If you can find someone getting better volume than that, then do it. But I'm not dropping him for some slot receiver that's going to get like 80 yards at the most. If you're dropping him, it's because you see a running back you really need. Maybe you need a fill-in tight end. Maybe you really just need a little bit more upside at wide receiver. But I would still be surprised in a 12-team league if you're dropping Chark. In a 14-team league, there's no way you can do that. In a 10-team league, that's where we can start to have the conversation because he is going through this quarterback change. He already, Minshew's fine, but Minshew's not an elite quarterback, and so he's not in a great situation. Laviska Shenault is good. They are going to use James Robinson, so he's not just a slam dunk. You're playing him every single week like we thought may happen coming into the season. And so do you need to drop him in a 10-team league? Maybe. Again, other formats, I would probably still hold on to him, but we're going to get to it and why I wouldn't play him this week. I really like this next question because it is forward thinking. Those are the questions we really like on this channel. Can we think about the future, the playoffs? Can we get to a championship? So someone asked, which defenses should we be looking at stashing for the playoffs? I'm glad you asked that because I had that same question, I think, like last week, and I never really looked into it. The offenses that we want our defense facing the most are the Jets, Cowboys, Giants, and Jaguars. Some other teams have given up more fantasy points to opposing defenses, but we know those four teams are going to stay bad. They are going to have quarterbacks who could just implode at any time, and so we want our defenses facing those teams. Among those teams, the real prize is the Jets. If you can get a defense playing the Jets, you're good to go in that week. So the Rams face the Jets in the fantasy semifinals, but they unfortunately face Seattle in the first round, and then the Patriots in the finals, which, it's kind of, we don't really know what's going to happen there. Are the Patriots still going to be in it in week 16 for the playoffs? Maybe. I would say, if I had to guess right now, no, but maybe. And so if the answer was no, are they kind of giving up at that point? Can't really know that for sure. But also, the Patriots would prefer to run the ball a lot, and that's not ideal for a defense facing them because you get points on what? Turnovers, which, you can fumble, but on average, you're going to prefer the team to be throwing more because that's more of an opportunity for sacked fumbles, sacks in general, interceptions. Running the ball, you can only get the fumble. So you would prefer teams not run the ball when you have a defense against them. So the Patriots aren't the best team to go against, even though they have given up a lot of points to opposing defenses. So if you want to add the Rams to get that Jets-Patriots semifinals, finals, I'm absolutely cool with that because they're a good defense in general anyways. But I would prefer the Browns. The Browns get to face the Giants in the semifinals and then the Jets championship weekend. We know that the Browns rank 6th in takeaways per game, so this is not a bad defense. We know that they should be pretty heavy favorites in both weeks, which will force the Giants and Jets to pass more, leading to more sacks and turnovers like I just mentioned. Aside from those two, Seattle is an option. They face the Jets in week 14, then Washington in week 15. I know they can't defend wide receivers, but they also do rank 1st in turnovers forced per per game, and the Jets game is at home, so they're a really nice team for the first week of the playoffs. I know some of you might get a bye, and so you're really only looking at weeks 15 and 16, in which case I'd look at the Browns and the Rams. But if you are looking at week 14 as well, if you can get Seattle and say maybe just stack Seattle and the Browns and just be like, I'm good to go for the playoffs, because at this point, benches matter a little bit less. You kind of have your starting roster out there. Some players don't have any more buys, and so you might not need everything on your bench. Usually at the beginning of the year, we're not having two defenses. At this point of the year, if you need to start stashing for the playoffs, do it. Because if you know you're going to make it there, well, you want to win when you're there, and so grab these defenses before teams take them. And you know what it's like, grab these defenses? It's the Rams and the Browns. They're already pretty good defenses. It's not like you could just play them against most teams anyways if you really needed to, so you don't technically need to even stash them. You can just play them in general. Next question, what should we expect from the Browns after their bye? We know that Nick Chubb is going to return, at least hopefully going to return. We know Odell is out for the year. I expect them to go very run heavy. They already rank 8th in rush attempts per game, but with Chubb back and healthy, I would think that they would kind of finish in the top 5. This, of course, means they're going to pass the ball less, and so they already rank 29th in pass attempts per game. That could go down a little bit more, but I would say they're going to have, on average, like 28, 29 pass attempts per game. That's not great. To me, it makes Baker pretty useless outside of, say, 14 or more teams in a league. Like if you're in a 10 or 12 team league and you're starting Baker, I don't know, man. Like you got to upgrade your quarterback in some way. I would also not trust basically any wide receiver other than Landry. And that includes Hooper. I know I said wide receivers, but people catching the football in Cleveland. I really only trust Jarvis Landry. Even with Landry, though, the targets will be there, but it's not like he's all of a sudden a wide receiver 1. I mean, he's going to get extra attention by defenses. And if you look at these 2 games without Odell, I know that technically they've only had 1 full game without Odell, but in the Cincy game, Odell left after like 2 or 3 snaps. And so we can just assume that was a full game without him. Landry's got 17 targets. So you're like, cool, that's a lot of targets. It's only 9 total receptions, so 4.5 a game. And he's only averaged 50 receiving yards, which that's not that great, and we know the touchdowns aren't going to be that high. And again, like that's without Chubb. Like Chubb's now returning, and so we think these pass attempts might go down. So I don't really love this offense in general right now. I do really like Chubb. I like Kareem Hunt, and Landry is like gonna get the targets, but the upside's not there. But other than that, it's a very low volume offense, and so I'm just not very intrigued with it. Next question, what are your thoughts on Wentz rest of season with the Eagles getting healthy again? Yeah, his value is obviously going to go up. Rager's back. Goddard's back. Sanders should be back after the bye. Ertz should return soon. I don't know if that's going to happen right after the bye, but it should be soon. And obviously, when you get all of your weapons back, you've got better people to throw to. They're getting open, so the offense is going to improve. The thing is, he's not going to all of a sudden be like a mid-range quarterback 1, right? I mean, we've got Mahomes, Wilson, Kyler Murray, Watson, Brady, Lamar Jackson, Herbert, Josh Allen, Rodgers. There's like 9 quarterbacks that are absolutely going to be better than Wentz. And then you've got this next tier of like 7 or 8 guys who maybe some of them are better, some of them are worse, but they're all pretty much the same play every week. And so he's going to be like a mid to high end quarterback too. That's probably not the news you were hoping for. You're probably hoping for me to say, yeah, he's got all these guys back. He's going to be a mid to low end quarterback 1. But it's still Carson Wentz. He's still going to throw interceptions. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to make bad reads. He's going to make bad decisions. And so I know these guys are going to help him increase his upside. They're going to be open more. He's going to get the ball out quicker. But listen, it's still Carson Wentz. His upside is a little bit capped because of who he is, how talented he is in general. And so I would say still a mid to high end quarterback 2, even when all these guys return. The next one was asked before the Thursday night game, but I still want to go over it briefly because it still kind of applies potentially moving forward for the Packers, and it's why is Aaron Jones taking so long to return? The answer is the Packers have been open about being overly cautious. They've already said that they are just not going to rush anyone back from injury unless they are fully healthy. So we saw it with Adams. Adams was going to remain out until they were 100% confident he was just good to go. They were not going to bring him back before he was ready. We see the same thing with Aaron Jones. They were not going to bring Aaron Jones back unless he was fully healthy. That is honestly good for fantasy because we know now that when these guys are held out with injury for a significant amount of time and then they return, they're good. Okay, so we know that these guys aren't going to go out there and be like Julio Jones sometimes when he's a complete decoy. He plays these games and you're like, I don't know really what to do here because Julio is going to be playing, but he might just stand there and do nothing. We know if Adams suffers another injury for like a week or two and comes back, he's back. He's good to go. We can start him with confidence. And so I know it can be frustrating when these guys miss more time than we think, but we should prefer that. We should prefer that they hold these guys out until they're good to go and not rush them back and then miss even more time than they would have. So I like that they take enough time for the players to get healthy, and then when they're out there, we can trust them. Okay, that is it for the questions. We'll now move on to the wide receiver cornerback matchups. And the first up this week is the Vikings wide receiver, and I'm talking about both of them here. We can usually predict the matchups where the Vikings passing attack is going to go off, and this is one of them. If you don't know, they get a home matchup with the Lions, and they're coached by Matt Patricia, and you guys know my feelings towards Matt Patricia. They're likely going to play a lot of man. They're going to play a lot of cover one, and that is where Thielen and Jefferson crush. Plus, it's possible, like I said to start this video, that Stafford plays. That is obviously going to benefit Thielen and Jefferson. There is positive correlation between opposing wide receivers and opposing quarterbacks. If the opposing quarterback is doing really well, you expect the opposing wide receivers to do well as well, unless, of course, one of the teams has just a dominant defense. But we know that's not the case for either of these teams. And so if this game, like Vegas thinks, is going to stay relatively close, we should not expect Dalvin Cook to have like 500 yards and 10 touchdowns every single week. Like he went off last week. He could absolutely go off this week, and he is a very good play this week. But we can't expect him to get all of the production every week. This is still a great matchup for Thielen and Jefferson. And so as long as this game is remotely close, which it should be, I think Thielen and Jefferson are going off. So if you've got them, I would make sure they're in your lineup. I would also make sure that you're starting Stefon Diggs. This is an incredible matchup at home against Seattle. Seattle has been absolutely dunked on by wide receivers this season. And given how much Diggs dominates the just passing volume for Buffalo, even if Josh Allen isn't as good as we thought, even if he doesn't have a fantastic game, which I think he will, Diggs can still explode even with Josh Allen not doing that great. Now, I think Josh Allen's going to do great. And so I think Diggs is going absolutely berserk this week. And I view him as a top 5 option even after this stretch of probably like 3 games in a row where Allen's looked bad. Diggs hasn't looked bad at all, but he hasn't been crushing in fantasy. I think this week he's going to crush. So get him into your lineups. For wide receivers, I'd be sitting. We'll start with DJ Moore. He plays at Kansas City this week, which is a brutal matchup for wide receivers. According to Lex Miraglia, Kansas City has allowed the second fewest receptions per game to wide receiver, the fewest wide receiver receiving yards, and the 4th fewest fantasy points per game. And we've talked about this basically every week. They are awesome at defending wide receivers. They limit wide receiver production a ton. You don't play wide receivers against the Kansas City Chiefs, especially in Kansas City. And especially on top of that, when the wide receiver hasn't even been crushing. I mean, we have faded very, very good wide receivers who have been on really good streaks against Kansas City, especially in Kansas City. Well, now you have DJ Moore, who had all of his receiving yards on the final drive last week. Just bench him. If you've got DJ Moore, I have DJ Moore. I am benching him. I'm benching him for Marquise Brown this week. And Marquise Brown also is a brutal matchup. I'm in a tough spot because of some buys, but listen, I'm even benching him for wide receiver playing the Colts, which we also don't like that matchup. And I could probably include Marquise Brown as a sit in this video as well, but I would still play him even over DJ Moore this week. I have no confidence in what he's going to do. I would also bench all Cowboys wide receivers. They face the Steelers this week, and with Dak and Dalton out, and then DiNucci benched, they're down to Garrett Gilbert and Cooper Rush. I do not care who they announce is starting in this game. I haven't heard as of recording this. I'm sure we're going to know, but I don't care. I mean, you would have to pay me to start one of Lamb or Gallup, and I would go out of my way to bench Amari Cooper. I know that's who they're going to scheme looks to, but look at what happened last week. I know we had talked about not playing him because of the matchup last week, but listen, the point is, these guys were already not seeing that great of production with Dalton. and then you drop down to DiNucci, and the production is not going to be great, and then you drop down even further to these other guys, we have no idea who they're going to favor, how they're going to look. Like, you have to have a better option, especially over Lamb and Gallup. There's no way you're forced to start those two. And even with Cooper, try your absolute hardest to not play him, because I have no confidence in their upside outside of like a busted play, and you can't predict those things. Final wide receiver I'd bench is DJ Chark. I know I said we'd get to him in this portion of the video, and I know I said I wouldn't necessarily drop him outside of maybe 10-team leagues, but he got absolutely shut down by Bradley Roby in week 5, and Roby is expected back this week. If Roby's out, if we get that news on Sunday, Chark, I would say, gets taken off of this list as a bench, because Roby is the reason why I would be fading Chark, and if he's not playing, then that reason goes away. But Roby's been phenomenal this season, and Chark in that matchup did absolutely nothing. And then, of course, I mentioned, I believe, earlier in the video, the quarterback change. I mean, we don't know where these targets are going to go in Jacksonville right now, and we don't know how good the quarterback is going to be, plus the fact that they do have some other guys. I know LaVisca is solid, Cole is solid, they've got James Robinson, and so it's not just Chark on the offense. And also, if you look this season, what's he done? I mean, outside of week 4, he's had 10, 3, 8, and 3 fantasy points. I mean, I'm cool benching a player who's only done that. Like, I would want Chark to prove it to me before I play him in a difficult matchup. So if you've got him, you're going to be looking and saying, ooh, the Texans are a good overall matchup. Yes, they are, not Chark specifically. So I would bench him. So I hope that was helpful to you guys. Remember to pay attention to the news, though. You've got to pay attention with COVID. Make sure on Sunday morning everyone's good to go. Keep your eyes on any sort of news that comes out on Saturday night and Sunday morning. And you can, of course, just look at how the rankings change. But that, my friends, is the end of this one. I hope you all did enjoy. If you did, then how about hitting that like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new? Thanks for watching.